Welcome back, outsiders. I've been getting a bunch of questions about what I have in my pack and some questions on I'm new to hiking, what should I carry in my pack? And the answer to that question is the 10 essentials to hiking. In this video, I'm going to go over my 10 essentials. I'm sure you've heard 10 essentials being thrown around in different groups or with your friends, but what exactly are the 10 essentials? The 10 essentials originated from the Mountaineers. They're a group in Seattle that's devoted to outdoor adventures and climbing. The original list of the 10 essentials was published in the 3rd edition of the book Mountaineering, The Freedom of the Hills, that was released in 1974. And the first list was 10 actual items. It was a map, compass, sunglasses, extra clothing, headlamp, first aid supplies, fire starters, matches, knives, and extra food. The purpose of the 10 essentials has always been to answer two questions. Number one, can you respond positively to an accident or emergency? And number two, are you prepared to safely spend a night outside? Since that first list of 10 essential items was published, it's kind of evolved over the years. At first it was 10 items. Now it's 10 systems. So it can be a little more than 10 items, but they fall into 10 different categories. Number one is navigation. Number two, sun protection. Number three, insulation. Number four, illumination. Number five is first aid supplies. 6 is fire. 7, repair kits and tools. Number 8 is nutrition. Number 9 is hydration. And number 10 is an emergency shelter. Like I said, it's 10 categories or systems to keep you safe outdoors. It may be more than 10 items. So full disclaimer, I am not an ultralight hiker. I try to minimize weight wherever I can, but at the end of the day, I'd much rather be prepared even if it means carrying a couple extra ounces of weight. I am personally on the side of I'd much rather be prepared for an accident than be caught off guard. In order to carry your 10 essentials, you're going to need a pack. So check out my review of my Osprey Talon and the woman's counterpart, Tempest. I recommend somewhere between 20 and 30 liters is probably a good size for a day pack. All right, so I got my 10 essentials laid out here. I'm going to put a link in the description for each one of the items as I go through it. The first category or system of the 10 essentials is navigation. And there's a lot of different options here. Option that you definitely need to take with you in the backcountry is a good topographic map. Usually these are printed on waterproof paper. If you print one out yourself, you can put it in a plastic bag or laminate it. You also need a very good compass, and you need to know how to use these two together, so check out my land navigation series. The compass should have a declination adjustment. There's a lot of technology that we use for navigation. We can certainly use our cell phones. There's a lot of great apps for that. I use a GPS watch. I find it very helpful to know the altitude that we're at, how many miles we've gone, but technology always fails. And you need to have a backup, which is why you need a good understanding of map and compass. One other thing I also carry with me that I would put in the navigation section is my personal locator beacon. This is the ACR Rescue Link. I have a video about this too, of why I chose this personal locator beacon to hopefully get me out of bind if I'm ever in it. Now, I've been asked, do I need to bring a map on every hike? Well, if you're going to your local park and you're very familiar with it, or it's almost impossible to miss trail, you probably don't need it. You know, if you get lost in some place like that, if you walk 10 minutes in either direction, you're probably going to come to a road or something like that that's familiar to you. But if you're going in the backcountry, by all means, always, always, always have a map and compass. The next category in the 10 essentials is sun protection. And this is very important both in the summer and the winter. First off, always have your sunscreen. This is SPF 30 or 50, something very strong, because you're going to be out in that sun a long time. And you don't realize it, but it's baking on you the whole hike. I usually apply sunscreen before the hike, and then I have a little bottle that goes in my first aid kit. Next up is sunglasses. I always bring sunglasses, and you should always have sunglasses in the winter because the white snow will reflect a lot of that sun and can damage your eyes. A hat is always a good idea. I usually prefer a baseball cap. A lot of people have like a brimmed cap to keep the sun out of their face. I usually supplement my cap with a buff This is a very lightweight UV protected buff. A lot of synthetic clothing today comes with what's called UPF. It's an ultraviolet protection factor. I have a bunch of lightweight long sleeve shirts that are great in even hot weather and protect me against the sun. So the next category is insulation. I always have a rain shell with me, no matter if it's winter, summer, spring, or fall. Never know when rains are going to hit, and that will also keep you warm from any kind of wind. Then, depending on the time of year and where you're hiking, will depend on your layering system. There's multiple layering systems, from 2 layers in the summer to 4 layers in the winter. I always recommend synthetic or wool-based clothes. Try to stay away from cotton as much as possible. Okay, illumination is next on our list. And I always have a headlamp with me, no matter where I'm hiking, even that local park. You never know when you're going to get caught out in the dark. And with that headlamp, you also want to have extra batteries. I put them in a baggie. Some people tape them together, but you don't want them rattling around in your pack. And I usually carry an extra flashlight, just in case my headlamp fails for some reason. I at least have a backup. The next essential system is your first aid. And you can accomplish first aid in a number of different ways. You can buy a pre-made kit. I suggest the Adventure medical kits. These are great. You can get them based on size and trip length. This one's for a group of 1 for 1 to 2 days, and they vary from 2 to 4 people, 2 to 4 days, and they progressively get bigger and more complex. You can opt to make your own. You can check out my Nalgene first aid video. I have a lot of good first aid gear in this Nalgene, and it's guaranteed to stay dry. Other important things in your first aid kit is a whistle. My bag, the Osprey, actually has a whistle on the chest strap, but I carry a spare whistle, and also a signal mirror, just in case you need to signal a rescue for whatever reason. And my buddy had given me this flare. He had actually had to use one for a rescue of himself. And the important thing with these flares is to check the date. This one expires December 2020. When he went to go use his flare, it didn't work. And the important thing with the first aid kit is not only carrying the kit, is also knowing what's inside the kit and how to use it. So I would suggest taking a wilderness first aid class. First aid in the backcountry is way different than first aid in everyday life, and it's highly recommended taking a class like that. My favorite category, fire. I usually try to carry 2 different types of fire starters. The easiest is just a Bic lighter, cheap, very, very reliable, but if this gets wet, it might be a problem. I have also a couple different types of matches. These are strike anywhere matches, so I can just strike it on a rock and they'll start. I have it in a pill bottle to keep it dry, but just in case, in the off chance those all fail, I have these stormproof matches that are absolutely amazing. They're coated, and you can actually light them. They'll light soaking wet. You can put them in water and they'll come back out with a flame. They're absolutely amazing. I use these only if I'm in dire need. These other ones are more of a everyday starting a fire at camp type of scenario. And another good thing to carry with your fire kit is some sort of kindling. Some people will carry fat wood, other people will carry cotton balls soaked in Vaseline. Both of those are probably my top 2 kindling choices. There's some commercial ones that I've had varying success with. So now we are up to repair kit and tools. And there's a bunch of different things that fall into this category. I'm going to show you what I have. The number 1 thing I think you should carry is some duct tape. I have this around a Nalgene. I also put duct tape around my hiking poles. I've used duct tape for just about every repair on the trail. It comes in handy. So if it's just a day hike where I don't have a tent and other complexities, I'll just carry my Swiss Army knife. It has a bunch of different tools on it that usually get me by on a day hike. If I'm on a multi-day with kayaks or snowshoes, tents, things that can break, I usually try to bring my Gerber multi-tool. And the reason I bring this is not only it has a bunch of different tools with it, it has pliers, and these come in handy to repair those fine items of your gear. So I'll take either one of those 2 things with me depending on the situation, but I will always carry my Mora knife, fixed blade knife. And this has come in handy on a number of occasions. If you use a ferro rod as one of your fire starters, you can use this to start. What I use this mostly for is to split bigger wood down into smaller wood to make your fire a little bit more successful. Also comes in handy if a bear or killer's coming in your tent. Another tool that you always want to have with you is some cordage. I just have maybe 20 feet of paracord. Comes in handy for shoelaces, for a ridge line. You never know when you're going to need it. So make sure you always have some cordage in your pack. All right, next up is nutrition. And this is going to really depend on the length of your trip and how hard the trip is going to be, your own body type. Some people need more food and less food than others. Also, if you're going to do a multi-day, obviously you're going to have to bring a lot more food. But to keep it really simple, my rule of thumb is if it's a pretty easy hike, pretty flat ground, I go with about 100 calories per hour. And if it's a more vigorous hike, like in the high peaks or climbing a mountain, I'll bump that up to 150 to 200 calories per hour. And I like different things. I like protein bars. They pack a lot in a little footprint. I also like nuts and trail mix type of things. For me, it's about variety. I like the different textures. Peanut butter is also another great thing to have on the trail. So you're just gonna have to plan ahead, kind of know yourself, know how long you're gonna be out on the trail and how hard it's gonna be. So now we're up to hydration, and like nutrition, this is very dependent on where you're going. So is it hot, is it cold? A lot of those things will depend on how much water you're gonna need. For a moderate hike at moderate temperatures, my rule of thumb is about a half a liter per hour. And again, that varies widely with body type and the level of activity. So I have a couple different things that fall into the hydration category for me. The first thing is where I can use it, I'm always going to use my bladder. This is just a Camelback that fits into my backpack. I also have a smaller backpack that I put my Camelback into. I like the convenience of always having the water next to your mouth. Some people will always go with a water bottle or a Nalgene. I found in winter the Camelbacks do not work. You have to use a vacuum sealed Nalgene bottle. I have a hydro flask for that. But what also falls under hydration is your water purification systems. Depending on the hike, you may not need to purify the water, but if it's a really, really long, strenuous hike in the summer, or if it's a multi-day hike, you're gonna have to purify water. And like fire, I always have two ways to purify water. So my first way to purify water is my Sawyer Mini. And this is a very simple gravity-fed or squeeze water purification. It's mechanical. There's a membrane in here that filters it out. It works very reliable. It works very quickly. The other form of water purification that I keep with me are what are called aqua tabs. These you'll just fill up your bladder or a water bottle, put the tab in, you got to wait 30 minutes, and then your water will be purified. There's a bunch of different types of systems of water purification. I'm probably going to do a whole video just on that. But needless to say, carry enough water and have a way to purify water if you're going to be on the trail for that length of time. One thing you want to remember for hydration is to replenish your electrolytes. I use these Nun tablets, and I will usually carry a water bottle with me, an empty one, because you don't want to mix this in your bladder in hot weather. You're sweating a lot, you're getting a lot of those electrolytes out, and you need to replenish them. A lot of things can go wrong if your electrolytes are low. So I always carry electrolytes with me. Another thing that people forget about is caffeine. If you're on a long hike or a multi-day hike and you're a coffee drinker, you might start to get a headache if you don't have caffeine. They actually make these Nun tablets with caffeine in them, or prepare appropriately with like a caffeine pill to make sure that you don't get that headache. So this brings us to the final of the 10 essentials, and that's shelter. And again, this is going to be a lot dependent on where you're going and how long you're going to be, and how far you are away from civilization. If you're going in the backcountry, you got to prepare for an overnight. If you're climbing an Adirondack high peak, definitely prepare for an overnight. And I do that a couple different ways. If I'm preparing for an overnight and it's normal temperatures, not winter, I just take a small bivvy with me. This is a survival bivvy. It's very small, very light, and it's kind of like a space blanket, but it looks like a sleeping bag. Now, if I'm going for any length of time, multiple days, or in the winter, I actually carry a tarp with me. And this is the Arcturus tarp. It's a heavy duty tarp with some heavy duty grommets. Very light. I've used it for multiple things. You can use it for an emergency shelter, as a something you lay down inside of a lean-to, or as a footprint for a tent. Works out really, really good. Now, if I'm just going in my local county parks, or I'm not expecting to be out into deep woods, I'll just take something like this. It's just a space blanket. You know, this is a quick shelter, but it's also a good thing if you have somebody that's injured and you want to prevent them from going into shock. Space blanket, it's cheap, it's light, it's easy to keep in your pack. All right, so we've gone over all of the 10 essentials, but there is actually an 11th essential. And I'm a big proponent of leave no trace. We're seeing a lot of use of our trails and a lot of garbage being strewn around. And what I do is I just have a stuff sack that I actually got from Leave No Trace for this purpose, and I'll pack out some garbage using this. And you should too. Wait, there's more. There's actually a 12th essential, but maybe this is classified under tools, maybe repair items. I'm not 100% sure, but it's your toilet kit. I usually have a little bit of toilet paper with me. I use unscented biodegradable wipes, and the reason I like those is because even if they get wet, they're still useful. And just a little bit of hand sanitizer. Keep that always available. You never know when that's going to come in handy. All right, so that's the 10 essentials. If you have any questions about any of these, or the reasons why I carry them, or specifics, be sure to comment below. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. These are the items that I keep in my bag almost always. And they vary depending on the length of the trip. You know, sometimes I won't take this tarp. Sometimes I won't take water purification. My medical kits might be bigger or smaller depending on the number of people in my group or how long I'm going for. But at the end of the day, these are the 10 essential items. As you can see, it's a system. It's a lot more than 10 items here. They do pack into my bag. They're not very heavy. And having these 10 essential items, I feel I'm prepared to answer those two questions. Can I positively react to an accident or an emergency? And are you prepared to spend a night outside? And as a bonus, as I was packing these up, I kind of said, hey, maybe some people would like to know how I actually pack these items in my pack and where I put them. So let's start from the front. My pack has 2 pockets here. This pocket has my pocket knife in it. This pocket has my personal locator beacon. Then my hydration pack, there's a sleeve on the back side of this where my hydration bladder comes out. On this top pocket, you can see this is a top pocket right here. In this part, I will put my items that I want to get to very quickly. So it's my headlamp always goes in there, my food, my compass, and of course my toilet bag. Then on my Osprey, it has a pocket on the back side here. I always put my maps here. They lay flat, they're covered and protected. It's a really nice place to put a map. Then on this outside is where I put my garbage bag, my 11th essential, and any other garbage that I might have. And then everything else I basically fit inside of my pack. And let me just show you one thing that I do have here is, you know, these are pretty waterproof, but they're not 100%. You can get a cover for your pack, which I do have, but I found getting a lightweight dry bag for the inside also keeps it dry. So I have everything else inside of this dry bag, with the exception of, like, if I have my Nalgene first aid kit, that can stay out because I know that that's waterproof. So I throw everything else in here. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, be sure to click that like button. If you want to see other gear how-tos, other adventures, be sure to subscribe to my channel. That's it for now. I'll see you guys outside.